Hello, hello. It's Mark here.
Hey, this is Marty. Happy
And
Halloween season.
yes, welcome to Stay in Your Lane, a sobriety show. Today, we're going to actually talk about guest appearances on our show and topic ideas. And really, what the motivation for this show is to get you guys to respond and give us some ideas. And also, if you'd like to be a guest, reach out, subscribe to our show, and shoot us an email or comment on this video. And we're starting to put our recording schedule together for the winter, and we would absolutely love to have you. Our goal is to give everyone a perspective on sobriety. And Marty and I had the opportunity to chit chat a little bit before we started recording today about a guest. Marty, do you want to fill in a little bit more? Because I think this is exactly the type of stuff that our show will be so valuable for people's perspective.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that I'm super pleased that we have such response to people wanting to be on the show and share their story, because a big thing that this is all about is shedding the shame associated with addiction, right? And when I was talking to our upcoming guest, and he said, "No problem. I'm 6 months sober," and it just I was like, wow, this is great. Somebody 6 months sober is willing to help out others, right? To shed the shame. But one of the topics that came up that we were talking about is that in order to properly prepare our guests, we're going to kind of outline, some areas to help guide them. So nobody goes in it feeling unprepared, right? So we were chit chatting a little bit, and the topic of sober dating and came up, and how it's different, and especially now during the COVID times. And I won't tell his whole story and give away, what we're going to talk about. But one of the things that he had mentioned is the dating type and who he wants to and doesn't want to date. And it was really interesting to see the correlation of who he thinks would be the ideal candidate and who wouldn't. And it's unique to him, right? And it could be something that helps you also to think about, if you're in the market for dating. Wow, that makes sense, and I can relate to that. So it was pretty exciting. I mean, I'm looking forward to having him on. And the great thing about this show is that it just evolves naturally, right? So even though we might present those 5 topics that we think that should be covered, it seems like our dialogue always just takes on a life of itself. And I think that's the beauty of our show.
Yeah. And, I think I share your same excitement, Marty, in the simple fact that we threw out to the universe that we wanted to have guests on here to portray different perspectives on this sober journey, because everyone's sober journey is independent to them. And it's going to be so unique and so different, but it's going to be so valuable to hear those perspectives so other people can strengthen their foundation. And I agree with you. The beautiful thing about this show, because it is a casual conversation, we're letting it evolve. And I'm sure, as many of you know, our first 5 episodes were very organic, very amateur. Marty and I are both learning all that we can about online recording, and we're trying to make our show as best as possible, but the best thing about the show is going to be the content.
Yeah.
So I'm super thrilled to see what unfolds as far as conversations with guests and all those different perspectives.
Yeah, and what I like about our show and how it is just naturally organic is that it exposes our vulnerability, right? It doesn't have to be scripted to be perfect. It's
Right.
just it's just perfect in its presence of development. And when you were speaking about that, also, and I'm a little bit excited about this too, is that one of our upcoming guests is also a psychic who is dealing or dealt with addiction. And I had never even thought about this topic, even being a clairvoyant myself. I had never even thought about, yeah, there's got to be, you know, a different perspective coming from that type of insightfulness. and trying to learn your skill set, that could be a driving force behind part of the addiction. It could also be part of the healing force. So I'm super excited to have her on.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I think I'd like to take the opportunity again to invite all of our viewers, please comment. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to our channel and comment if you'd like to be a guest first and foremost, but we're always looking for show topics too. So we would love to hear from you and hear what your ideas are.
Yeah, and make sure to give us a thumbs up on the show. It means a lot, and we do want to hear from you. So we have our email address that you can get through to us on, and it will help this show to be ours, meaning
Yes,
everybody's. And
absolutely.
I think that's so important because there's so many of us out here that are sober living, and I shared it with a friend of mine. I said, "Hey, sign on to the show," and he's like, find out that his brother's suffering from addiction right now, but then he's got an employee that has got 4 years under his belt, and the guy wears it as a badge of honor, right? So we just want to get everybody over that hurdle of the shame part.
Yeah, it's so true. Um, because this was basically an invitation for comments, suggestions, and people that would like to be a guest. I think another thing that would be important to talk about today is pandemic fatigue. I saw a really interesting article on pandemic fatigue, and the pandemic's been going on long enough that people are really starting to feel the mental health kind of stress from it. And I know that can be a trigger for a lot of people because it sparks things like hopelessness, depression, anxiety. So I thought that would be a great little topic to end up with today. And, how are you feeling at this point, Marty? We got to spend the summer together, but we've been apart now for 6 or 7 weeks. Are you and Corey experiencing any pandemic fatigue? And if so, has it sparked any cravings or flirted with your sobriety in any way?
You know what? This is a great topic. Thank you for bringing it up. For one thing, I find myself trying to hold on or grasp, reaching back to what was normal in 2019 for our relationship. And I keep reaching backward, right? It's awkward. I've got to get into the present day in dealing with how COVID has changed our relationship. One of the big things I talked about is COVID clutter. I have kind of an OCD on my behaviors. You wouldn't tell by the mess on the desk back there, but um, I have patterns that help me get through my day, and I've been to the behavioral therapist that helped me with my, get over the drinking. But yeah, it's certainly a trigger because just the other day, there's this thing called COVID clutter here at the house. I love my partner dearly. He's a great guy, but he admits that since COVID, he's got real lazy and comfy, and like no matter where he goes, there's something left behind that's a sign that he was there, right? So I call it the COVID clutter. And when I talked to him the other day about it, I'm like, hey, back on that topic, that my therapist says bring everything right to the forefront. You know, could we potentially today declutter the COVID clutter from the house? He's like, what are you talking about? And he said, the house is perfectly clean. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess it is, right? So we're both walking around in the same living space, seeing it totally differently. So if one of us didn't step up to the plate and talk about it, I know that it was festering inside of me, like, I'm going to have this conversation. I'm going to have to, and
Right.
before I would have just been like, let me have a vodka and diet to help get through this.
Right, exactly. Well, no, and I
So
think these are the raw, real emotions that come out of all of this stuff. And I think that there are things that could happen naturally, not during a pandemic, but they're almost heightened because we are spending so much time together, and our living spaces are not only our living spaces and our sanctuaries anymore, but they're also our workspace.
yeah,
So,
that's a great point because
yes,
I'm working from home now, and
right.
he's working from home now. and we are together like 24/7. Other than another part of this is also the exposure, going out and socializing. You know, what you have to find a common ground in an understanding for each other, because he's much more social. He's a lot younger than I am, and his social circle is a lot bigger. And he's going out, like last night, they went to a drag show and sending me pictures of him and his friends sitting at the table. The other tables are, more than 6 feet apart, but the people that came to the show that are sitting at the table with him, do they have COVID with them, or did they bring it there, right? So these are all stressful things that are playing in my mind that ordinarily I would have solved through alcohol.
Right. Well, and I think that that speaks volumes to kind of, when there's this constant underlying fear and anxiety of, is this disease going to affect us? And how is it going to affect us? Um, After 7, 8 months, that underlying fear and anxiety tends to build. And so, I think some really helpful things that we can all do, especially to protect our sobriety in such an emotional kind of um, time that we don't know how it's going to turn out, is we can take care of our bodies. We can limit the amount of news we intake. I think that's a huge one. um,
Oh,
we can lower our stress, and I think that's where taking care of the body comes into play. We can do yoga, breathing exercises, reading, watching a movie, connecting with others. Even though a lot of our connection is via Zoom or internet, I think it's still important to schedule time with people, even if it's not in person, to have that human connection. um, I'm reading through a list of things here. That's where I'm getting these. Accept your feelings. The last couple days in Cincinnati has been rainy and gross, and I just kind of unplugged and I watched some Netflix and watched some movies. And that's really hard for me to give myself permission to have true downtime, because I always feel the overwhelming desire to be productive and to be busy. So just to give myself permission to do that really took a lot of stress and anxiety off of my shoulders. And I felt rejuvenated and refreshed after I did that. So I think it's important for all of us to give ourselves permission to feel what we're feeling in the midst of something we've never experienced before. And don't be afraid to talk about it with people that you're close with as well, because there are a lot more people feeling the same things right now because of the nature of our society.
yeah, and I mean that is some solid advice, Mark. I mean, you know me, I'm always guilty of always being on the go, right? And it is something I think that our society conditions us to be these days, is always on the go. And like you said, spot on, give yourself permission for downtime. And it is so rewarding, and it repairs your psyche, your body. It just really does. I mean, I sat down last night and watched I love elephants, and I watched an elephant documentary that I hadn't seen before. And you know what, that 50 minutes of just escaping, it felt fantastic. I woke up this morning just being like, almost like that feeling while you're on vacation.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's so important. And, I think giving ourselves permission is the first step. But then, you know, lean into those emotions. It's okay to feel stressed right now. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel anxious, because we're all navigating something we've never had to live through before. So it's okay. Talk about it, escape it for a bit with a good Netflix show or a movie, a good book. But be strong and don't let it take away your sobriety.
Yeah, because the the sober interpretation of life is so much better than you know intoxicating it with toxins, and
Yes.
just is. It just feels so great, and it's more consistent actually. I don't have to keep, like when I was an addict, I, I kept having to refuel, with substance. that I thought was but substance, right? But true substance are the things that happen naturally, organically, and just
Right.
that fuels your system longer, better, stronger.
Yes. And another thing that just crossed my mind as we were talking about this is I think this is a great opportunity too for anyone that's watching that's not an addict, but you have people in your life that have dealt with addiction. I would use this as an opportunity to reach out to them just to make sure they're okay. There's a lot of emotions and struggles that come with post addiction and recovery. And, if you're watching this to get a better perspective on how the addict might be feeling, you know, be proactive and reach out to people that that are suffering and are in recovery because they really might need that first step to be taken for them, especially when isolation and loneliness and disconnecting is very common in this type of situation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's another thing is that going back, circling back to the guests, we'd like to have also family members, friends of people that are battling addiction, or even friends of sober people that on our show. I mean, what you have to say can and will help others, because there's other people out there like yourself supporting emotionally and mentally their loved ones through this. So I would love to hear from people and get guests on that are in the supportive role.
Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you. I come up with them every once in a while.
I love it. I'm going to write it down.
Right.
Well, I think this has been a fantastic show, and I'm excited to see what kind of response we get, what kind of comments we get. And I'm so excited to start booking guests. Just to fill you all in a few weeks, Marty and I and Corey, his partner, will be spending the winter down in Florida. So this is going to give Marty and I an opportunity to really, make some great shows. We're going to be coming to you live 5 days a week. And we're super duper excited about that. I think this is such a great tool to put in your sobriety tool belt. And we want to give everyone the magic that we felt when we had the opportunity to have this conversation every morning when Marty was driving to work.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to our ability to produce more shows, to touch more lives, to help more people. And remember, everybody, this is our show, meaning that you're a part of it. You watching, you presenting feedback. You can also help others to experience a more satisfying life. Their passion, their purpose, and get a better payout on overall existence.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. And we will look forward to seeing you again soon.
Sounds great. Look forward to seeing y'all.